Hello, welcome to my YouTube channel, and my name is Starlight, and you can give my videos a thumbs up and you can subscribe to my YouTube channel. Plus, don't be afraid, don't be shy, swing by and say hi to Starlight by leaving Starlight a comment down below. Beep, beep, beep. And you could share my videos with your family or friends. A mole and a bumblebee? Sure, you could share my videos with a mole or a bumblebee. And also, don't forget the notification. Plus, you can also, if anyone would love, you can send love donations to Starlight, and that will be on my Cash App, and you can do that on my Cash App through here. Ding! There it is. And okay, now today, it's about, sounds like you need some self-love. That's what it sounds like. It sounds like you need some self-love. And, you know, the way society is that, you know, we've been told to push, you know, go to work. You know, I don't know what kind of job you have. You know, it's, you know, like, you ain't got nothing to prove to anybody, you know. And I'll tell you what, I was that chick long time ago, showing up to work. You know, like, how much money was I making anyway? Being a single mom, working at Burger King, I'm dead sick. But Starlight felt like, you know, I need to show up, you know, because people are going to need fattening food. So that was Starlight long time ago. Being a single mom, taking care of 2 kids. Where's the dads? I don't know. They weren't there. Yeah, 2 dads. You got a problem? Come here and tell me about it. Yes, my kids had 2 dads, both of them. I'm being funny, but you know, the way society is, you know, people always got to get their nose in places where it doesn't belong. So these days now it's you know, it's normal. It's, you know, everybody's no, not everybody, but you know, there's a lot of parents out there that have, you know, kids from different daddies, you know. So anyway, besides that, is when I was a single mom, you know, working at Burger King, I had, you know, I was coming down with the flu. And you know what? It was like horrible because I'm like lifeless. I'm in pain. I don't have the energy. And you know what? I couldn't make that phone call and can't, you know, and say, sorry, but I can't go to work. I'm sick. I ended up showing up and I regretted it, you know. And there's a lot of people showing up to work when they should have called out or even get another job, you know. But, you know, I just met a man tonight. It's kind of funny, the timing, you know. It's almost like God sent me there as I was going to the door to go in at the gas station to use the bathroom. And a man was just walking, you know, dragging it. And I could see him like, my, you know, he looks sore. He looks like he's in pain, you know. So we talked as we're heading to the door, and I'm thinking he's just getting out of work, you know. I'm like, I go, my, you know, you look like you're in pain. He goes, I am. And I said, well, you know, you really need to get home and get some rest. He goes, I'm actually heading to, I can't because I'm actually heading to work right now. What? You got to be kidding me. You were heading to work right now? Looking like that? That was Starlight long time ago. You know what? It doesn't matter what freaking people think. And this is what I had a hard time when I was younger. What is everybody at work? You know, that was in my headspace. What is everybody? They're going to talk about me and treat me like I'm a lazy person. I'm not a lazy. I'm a hard-ass worker. I'm a Virgo. You know? But that's what my mindset was like. It was like, no, I gotta show up to work because they're gonna talk behind my back, you know, because that's what they were doing to other people when they didn't show up, you know. They would, you know, somebody would call out of work, and this goes with a lot of companies. You know, there's times that people might call out of work. They might look fine on the outside, but what's going on inside, they're not doing good. You know, and a lot of people, they get their nose into other people's business, and then they talk behind their backs, like I've witnessed so many times, even when I went to church. This didn't just happen at work, you know. People wouldn't show up at church. People all had to sit there and gossip and talk about these people when they weren't even there to defend themselves. Why they weren't, or how come they didn't show up? Isn't that between God, really? You know, but this is what happens to people, is that we think we got to answer to other people, but you don't have to answer to other people. You know, your body is telling, like this man, he's a big guy. He's not a small guy, you know? And I didn't get to even know what his name was. I didn't have to know what his name was. I spoke up. I'm like, who am I? Starlight, I can't believe you just did that. Yeah, I did that. I did that. I looked at him and I said, you know what? It looks like you need some self-love. You know? Did he work? You know, people do this. They work, they go home, and then they go right back to work. They feel like they gotta prove to the other workers, you know, how manly these people, you know. Hey, I'm a man. Look, look at me. And I looked at the guy. Here, he doesn't know me. I don't know him. But I did this all in love. I said, I am nobody. But, you know, you got to listen to your body. When I say I'm nobody, that means I'm not a doctor. But it was, you know, obvious. He was in pain. He said he was in pain. But, you know, when I seen him walking across the parking lot, you know, I know what pain feels like walking across. I'm like, you know, because I have a leg that every so often, my ankle, one of my ankles on my right foot, man, if I got sneakers on, or even my sandals, and that baby's hurting, whoo, it's painful. So, and I was having problems with my legs recently where I was limping everywhere, you know, because I had pain in my, you know, leg, you know. So you can see that, and you know, out in public sometimes, you know, people, you're like, ooh, you know that they're in pain. So I told this guy, I said, you know what, you don't need to be a slave to the system. You know, people think that, you know, they don't want to hear people like, oh yeah, he didn't show up last night. And you know, that's part of this. Worrying about what other people are going to say behind your back. Who gives two shits, really? I used to be that one. Oh, what are they going to say? When I go back, you know, and I come back to work and they're all looking at me, you know, like you're like, oh, what were they saying when I wasn't here? You know? Church, the same thing. It was no different. You couldn't tell that you were in church or you're out in the world. There was no difference. That's why I don't go to church. Now, some of you might be offended on that, and that's okay. But I have every right to speak my mind and my heart. And, you know, there's some people that woke up to the truth, and there's some people still sleeping. There's some people that haven't learned a lesson, and there's people like me that has learned those lessons. I don't need to answer to people. I don't need to answer to a man. I answer to God. And I need to listen to me. When your body says, no, don't go in tonight, you know what? You'd be doing, you would be doing your future self a big favor. There's a guy that I know that lives around here, and Years ago, 3 years ago, I used to work for him, and he painted for 30 years straight. That's what he did for 30 years, painted houses. Have you ever painted before? I'll tell you what, that's a very strenuous job. Ceilings are a bitch. Ceilings are horrible to clean. That's a lot on your neck, on your arms, your head. And I was trying to help him out a long time ago. He didn't need to, do the painting. Is that he had a side job where he can make money, and he had a lot of money saved up. But you know what? People think it's lame, because that's exactly what this person just recently said to me, is he's got to do some mulch at his house. And, I don't know how heavy those bags of mulch are. I don't know, are they 50-pound bags? I have no clue, So I told him, I said, you ought to ask the workers there to help out and put the bags of mulch, in your vehicle. But he's like, oh, that's lame. So here he can't even move his body. He's, and I said, Ma, you look stiff. And he's like, yeah, you're right. That's exactly. I was watching him because I knew him 3 years ago, and I seen how his body was moving then. He was in pain from painting for all those years. And now he's like a robot. He can't really move, he's stiff. And that's no way to live. He already just recently got x-rays and all this stuff. He's supposed to do exercise. Is he doing the exercise? I absolutely don't know. But you can really stop now, ahead of time, before it's too late later on down the road. Even my brother that's no longer here, same thing. He abused his body. He abused it. He was a show-off, and everybody knew that. He wanted to show off and show everybody how tough and what a hard worker. And a lot of it does, and it can stem all the way back when you're a kid. When kids go through so much torture and abuse when they're growing up, being called lazy and being called stupid and, being beaten, to work harder. That's the kind of reality, this reality is with people, is that they think they got to prove to other people that I'm not lazy. Nobody wants to get called lazy. So yeah, I'll tell you what, you need to learn to listen to yourself. There's a very few people that give a shit and will tell you that, you gotta rest. You gotta take time out. But people think they gotta prove something to the world, and they gotta prove something to their families, and that taking time off is for wimps. Asking somebody else for help to carry something and put it in their truck is lame. Because if your body is already hurting already, and you think it's lame, and you think that you gotta prove something, I didn't want to carry the big bags. I carry a 24-pack just to stick it in my car. I'm learning, even with my body, is to slow down. I don't have my younger version of myself. Well, yeah, let me pick that big bag up. No, I'm learning from other people that are suffering, or my brothers that is not even here. The other reason people do this to themselves is the dollar bill, because the man that I met earlier, that was, he was in pain. He didn't have to tell me he was in pain. You could see it. I almost could feel his own pain, I'm a Virgo and I'm an empath, so I could feel his pain. And I went to him, and I even told him that, I care about you. Maybe you ought to get a different job. Because he's doing construction work. The whole crew, they had a whole crew that were heading out. Whole bunch of trucks. near the gas station. I actually was letting them through so then they can all be in one group when they head out wherever, you know, is that people think they got to prove something to other people. And then the other thing is, you know, I fell for this when I was younger, is when people make money and then, you know, somebody calls out and the employer needs people to, you know, fill in those places, those spots, you know, and they're like, hey, do you want extra, more hours? You want more money? Want more money? Oh, how much money am I going to get? Because they feel like they got to prove something to other people so they can go around telling other people, how many hours did you do this week? You know, I knew a guy a long time ago when I used to live out here. It was ridiculous. He wanted to have a relationship with me. How am I ever going to have a relationship with you when you're working all the time? You know, he worked 12-hour shifts every day, and then he had Sunday to himself. What kind of life is that? Nah, I'm not interested in going with you. You don't even, you know, like you don't even have any time. I wasn't interested in anyway, but there's no time. You don't even have any space. Where are you going to stick me on your busy week anyway? You know, people chasing the dollar bill thinking that I got to get that money. I'll tell you what, like the guy right now with the painting, he has insurance, health insurance. He's paying for it now. He's paying for it. He had to go to the doctors. How much did that cost? You know, and I'll tell you what, when it comes to going to see a doctor, you don't even know if you can trust them. Are they charging extra money to you, you know, and getting more money out of you when they don't need to, you know? So you got to listen to yourself. Stop chasing the dollar bill, you know, thinking, oh, I got to get more money. What, to prove to other people? Look at how, you know, and if that man that I seen, if he's got a girl, you know, there's some women out there, they just want money, 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 money. And guys are afraid that they're going to lose that girl because, you know, hey, you got to give me material stuff. This happens in relationships. So there's men that don't want to lose a girl that they have, you know, for whatever reason. I don't know why. Why do you want to hang on that girl anyway? You know, if they're just after your money and after things and, you know, they don't care about you as a person, you know. That man, I didn't know him. I didn't need to know him. But I said, maybe you ought to find a job that's not so, you know, demanding. And I know it is you know, they make good money, you know, but is it really worth it later on? You can't even enjoy your life because you're in pain. A lot of people suffer with back pains. There's nothing that the doctors can do most of the time. I've heard lots of cases out there with people suffering from back pain. And then there's medications that they could give you, but they're addictive. You know, you could get hooked on those things like painkillers, you know. Oh, is that the answer to everything? That's not really curing the problem. So I told that man, hey, I care about you, I love you. He needed to hear that somebody cares enough. You know, if he is seeing someone out there, a female, be like, huh, you know, this strange lady, a white chick, told me she loves me. She cares about me. And here, you know, I got this girlfriend or wife. She never tells me to take any time off. She never says, hey, maybe you ought to call out tonight, honey. No, she's pushing me to go out, you know, to get more money. For what? Because there's women out there. I am serious. I know a female a long time ago, I was like, you gotta be kidding me. If he got in trouble in the doghouse, you know what the doghouse is like, guys? Of course, all the guys get in the doghouse once in a while, right? Well, when he got in the doghouse, hey, I'll forgive you. but you're taking me shopping this weekend. You're going to buy me some clothes. Really? And then they wonder why these people end up where they are now. It's because that kind of behavior. That's not love. You know? That's not love. So, you gotta listen to yourself. Stop listening. Stop caring about what other people want you to do. Like I told that guy, you know, and it's probably a combination of being a slave to the system, that you got to prove to everybody that I'm a hard worker, because a lot of it does stem back to when they were kids. There's kids that have been beaten, you know, called lazy. You're lazy. You're lazy. You're freaking nothing but a lazy ass, you know? There's kids that go through this torment as children. And their whole life they want to prove to their... all the kids out there who are adults right now would love to have mom and dad to appreciate them, and, you know, and to say something kind to them, and, you know, like appreciate them and inspire them. Woo! I do that. I do that all the time with my son, because he's amazing. You know, you got to be real. You can't, you know, if you tell somebody they're doing a great job when they're not, you're not helping them. You need to be authentic with the people out there, but not all these kids that were, you know, abused psychologically, verbally abused or beaten, calling them lazy, you know, calling them stupid. My brother that's no longer here, he went through hell as a child, just like his sister, because he was a chosen one. I realized this. But you don't have to listen to those people. You got to listen to yourself. You got to listen to your body, because this is, you know, this is what you were given. You know, later on, you're not going to enjoy relationships. You're not going to enjoy your life. You won't forget about hiking anywhere, going downstairs, upstairs. You're going to have problems. And there's a lot of times that I don't know why, that there's nothing that the doctors can do. Many cases out there. So you really got to listen to yourself. Listen to Starlight, because I love you and I care about you. But, you know, if you're that person that's always pushing, and it doesn't even have to be a strenuous job, because if you got other shit going on in your life, it could be sitting at an office. You need time off? Take the time off. If your boss is a really good boss, they will understand. Stop taking extra time and extra hours that you already, you know, you ain't got nothing to prove. You don't have to prove anything to nobody out there. Don't think, you know, I learned quick on that thing about, you know, working on the weekends. Man, that was like hell for me to work on the weekends. Now, I already did Monday through Friday. I need some time off. You know, I screwed up on that, you know, and every Saturday I dreaded it. Like, because Starlight, yeah, and once you get in that position, then it's like, how are you going to get back out of it, you know? Especially if all the workers already got their hours, you know? So, and they're already working on that Saturday with you, you know? So, that's when, these are lessons that we either already learned, like Starlight, but you got to listen to yourself. Stop. You don't have to prove anything to anybody. I love you so much. I hope you get a lot of help from this video. This is Starlight. Love, light, and peace. Thank you for watching. This is Starlight. Namaste. This is Starlight. Love, light, and peace.